In history, we see that the biggest skydiving accident was caused by a small mistake. The realization of this mistake occurred when 18 skydivers jumped from the plane and there were no options to go back. After the jump, the excitement of the skydivers turned into fear. These skydivers were well experienced, but unfortunately, all the years of their experience became useless at this point. In this accident, 16 skydivers lost their lives, and the remaining 2 skydivers were luckily alive. They shared a tearful story. The whole world is remembering this accident by calling it Lake Erie. Lake Erie is located in the state of North America, in Ohio, and is the 4th and 11th largest lake in the world. In the south of the lake, 13 kilometers away, there is a small airfield called Ortner Airport. On August 27, 1967, 30 skydivers arrived because they were offered a free flight. During World War II, the plane used was a B-25 bomber, modified by a private company that invited skydivers for a free flight. As the skydivers went inside the plane one by one, the B-25 plane exceeded the passenger limit. In the last moment, the pilot selected only 20 skydivers based on their experience and skills due to overweight issues. The remaining 10 skydivers were saddened, but they didn't know that the pilot's decision would save their lives. The plan was for the B-25 bomber to take off from Ortner Airport, fly in a circle, go up to 20,000 feet, and let the 18 skydivers jump. Then, the plane would fly upward to 30,000 feet, and the remaining 2 skydivers would jump. All skydivers were to land with parachutes at Ortner Airport. Due to bad weather, the morning flight was postponed and rescheduled for the evening at 3 p.m. The B-25 bomber plane took off at 3 p.m. In the plane, all the skydivers were excited because they got a free flight and their first experience jumping from a bomber plane. After the B-25 plane took off, a small plane, Cessna 180, took off from the runway. The task of this plane was to record the skydivers' jumps from 12,000 feet. Both plane pilots were connected to the control tower due to bad weather conditions, and they received directions to fly. Finally, after an hour, the B-25 bomber reached an altitude of 20,000 feet. The pilot talked to the control tower and asked for their location. At this time, GPS technology was not invented, and due to bad weather conditions, the pilots had to rely on the control tower for assistance. The control tower informed the pilot that they were 9 kilometers away from Ortner Airport, indicating they were close to the drop zone. After a minute, the Cessna 180 pilot contacted the air traffic controller, aligning their location with the B-25 bomber plane. Due to bad weather, the Cessna pilot couldn't see the plane. The air traffic controller informed the Cessna pilot that they were 9 kilometers behind the B-25 bomber plane. After a few minutes at 20,000 feet altitude, the B-25 bomber pilot asked again for their location. This time, the air traffic controller stated they had reached Ortner Airport. At this moment, the pilot relayed the message to the skydivers to prepare for the jump. The small mistake that caused the loss of skydivers' lives happened. However, at this height, the temperature was 30 degrees Celsius, and due to the cold, the skydivers wore double layers of skydiving suits. All the skydivers jumped from the B-25 bomber plane simultaneously. During the free fall, they formed their positions. However, upon crossing the layers of clouds, their excitement turned tragic. Instead of seeing the airport, they saw Lake Erie all the way below. At this moment, at around 3,000 feet, all the skydivers deployed their parachutes. Their plan was to land on the lake's border, but unfortunately, it didn't happen. They landed at least 10 kilometers away from the lake's border. Their plan to land safely and start swimming for help failed because wearing double layers made them too heavy to swim. The remaining 2 skydivers, before jumping, removed their shoes and double layers. They were able to swim and were rescued, while the remaining 16 skydivers unfortunately lost their lives. Their bodies couldn't be found for days. After a week, the bodies were recovered. This accident made headlines worldwide. Due to this accident, an investigation team was launched. Their task was to determine where the B-25 bomber plane was supposed to drop the divers and who was at fault. According to the air traffic controller, when the B-25 bomber plane dropped the divers, It was inside the 10-kilometer zone of erie at Ortner Airport. They believed that heavy winds caused the skydivers to drift to the lake. However, if we consider the air traffic controller's claim, the heavy winds could only drift the skydivers 20 kilometers, 10 kilometers from Ortner Airport, and then another 10 kilometers to Lake Erie. Experts calculated the speed of air and the height of diving, concluding that the divers could only drift a maximum of 5 kilometers. The investigation team found the air traffic controller's statement suspicious. According to the pilots, they received the wrong location. In the end, the investigation team released a statement stating that when the pilot asked for the location from the air traffic controller, the controller's shift had changed. The second controller shared the location with the B-25 bomber, which was, in fact, the location of the Cessna plane on the airport. The B-25 bomber plane ended up in Lake Erie, and the second mistake was from the pilot and the divers who didn't follow aviation law, jumping without confirming the target. In the memory of the 16 skydivers, other skydivers wearing floating equipment and skydiving into the lake. In 1972, the court ordered the Federal Aviation Authority to be the cause of the death of 16 skydivers and suspended the B-25 bomber pilot's license for a lifetime. They also implemented rules for skydivers to jump at least 50 kilometers away from any lake. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to subscribe to the Mystery History YouTube channel, like this video, and share it with your friends.